So probably a lot of people wonder, how did you get started doing this? Were
Yep.
you did you love skiing growing up, or were you more of a history buff, or how did you do all
A little bit of both. I learned to ski in 1989 at Neshoba Valley in Massachusetts, which was near my hometown in Chelmsford. And I learned to ski there, and then we started taking family trips up north to North Conway, New Hampshire. And on our first ski trip north there, we passed a place called Mount Whittier, which is a huge lost ski area right on Route 16. And that was neat because it had a gondola that went across the road, and the base lodge was there and all boarded up, and T-bars were all, you could see the trees growing up through them. But it was still hadn't been abandoned terribly long, like 6-7 years, so you could still make out a lot of the scenery. And I was just really fascinated. I'm like, what happened here? You know, I just wanted to know what had happened. And I was a young skier, and I had no real concept of the ski industry or what other skiers were like. And then on that same trip, we were at Black Mountain in New Hampshire up by North Conway. And we went to, we skied at Black, and across the road, across the valley, there's Tyrol Mountain. And that's another lost ski area, and you can see the trails of that in the distance. So I started just getting curious. I wondered what happened, and there just weren't any resources out there. There weren't any books, or the internet wasn't around. So if you wanted to try to find out what had happened to these places, it was slim pickings. So I ended up over in high school and late middle school, when we would go on family trips, we'd go to antique shops and try to find old maps or maybe an old brochure or postcard, and that was always cool to find that. My parents were great. When we did our ski trips, we'd always try to find one of these areas, and they kind of liked exploring for them as well. So it was a lot of fun. And then when I got to college, I just decided to start a website in 1998 and just put together everything that I had gathered with the hopes that other people would see it, share their info, and the site would grow. And that's exactly what happened, and the site just exploded after the word got out about it. So that's really how the site started, and then it's just been on a roll ever since, and just collecting information from people, pictures, stories, put it all on the web.
And the web address is?
Yep, it's nelsap.org, N-E-L-S-A-P.org. And it's a free website. There's no registration or anything like that. It's completely free and open to the public.
And that's an acronym for New England Lost?
Yep, New England and Northeast Lost Ski Areas projects. Yep, I've added more to the Northeast areas now that I'm not living in New England, to add New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and even some Quebec ski areas as well. So the acronym still works pretty good for both of those.
So you did the Southern Adirondacks.
Yes.
That's the book that's out now. That
Yep.
was your third book after doing New Hampshire and Vermont.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so there are, I mean, people know Gore and they know Whiteface, but there are literally dozens of small ski areas that are worth through the years in the Southern Adirondacks.
Oh yes, in Southern Adirondacks there are 39 ski areas that have now closed, which is an amazing amount of areas. And they range from bigger mountains like Alpine Meadows in near Corinth, New York, which had 1,000 vertical feet and 3 T-bar lifts and was a major ski area, to a tiny area in Warrensburg, Blister Hill, which was just a short rope tow and a very easy beginner slope. And they're everywhere in between. And they're just about every town had one of their own little rope tows. Lake George had a whole bunch of them. Old Forge did as well. And Speculator, just about every town, North Creek, they all had their own little rope tow areas. So they were everywhere. It really was a slice of Americana to have all these small little ski areas in operation in all these Adirondack towns.
And Ticonderoga?
In Ticonderoga, they had a ski area there called the Punch Bowl. It was actually a snow train destination. People came up from Schenectady on the snow trains and went up to Ticonderoga. Hundreds of people, and then the local townspeople would take them to the ski area, which is pretty next to the golf course that's there now in Ticonderoga. And it had a couple rope tows and a few slopes, and had a toboggan chute. And it was a fun place, but it was built very low in elevation, and it faced southeast, which is just a bad mix for a ski area. So it didn't last very long. The snow was terrible those first few years, and eventually it was abandoned. And that rope tow then went to Beach Hill, which is in Schroon Lake. They moved the tow over, and so it got a second shot at life in the late 40s.
Was the case with most of these small hills and mountains that eventually people just started going to the Whitefaces and Gores, and
Yep.
then they sort of lost favor.
Yeah, that's certainly one of them. A lot of times, yeah, once the bigger mountains, there was a lot of competition between the big mountains and the small mountains. It also became more expensive to run some of these smaller ski areas. They couldn't afford snowmaking, they couldn't afford grooming, so they were pretty basic. And then people's habits of just their vacations and how they spent their free time changed in the 70s and 80s. And before, people were kind of stuck in the winter. You know, you only had a few choices of things you could do, and on your winter vacation, you went skiing. But as airfare got cheaper and roads got better, people could fly to Disney World or take a cruise. So you don't think of cruising or Disney World as being a competition to Adirondack ski areas, but indeed it is. Because people from the city that used to come up would say, oh, maybe I'll go and take a cruise for this trip.
So now you're investigating, you're working on your fourth book on northern Adirondack ski areas, and you think there's about the same number, maybe as many as 40?
There could be as many as 40 when you consider from Ticonderoga, pretty much all due west and north of the Canadian border, including all the small ski areas, the small rope tows and private ski areas that existed, among some pretty big ones like here at Lowenberg, or Marble Mountain, the original Whiteface, Cobble Mountain in Lake Placid. Lake Placid has a whole bunch of them. We're looking forward to exploring more of those as well. But there's about 40 is my estimate in that whole region. They're kind of scattered everywhere, but there's definitely clusters where there's more ski areas than others.
And this one we're at, Lowenberg, this was designed to be an incredible resort.
Oh yeah, this was going to have at least a dozen chairlifts and over a 2,000-foot vertical drop and trails covering the mountain, and it really would have rivaled some of the best ski areas in the Northeast. And this is a fairly high elevation mountain. It gets a lot of snow. It's late April, there's still snow on the ground here in patches. It faces north, and it would have been a really big place, but as far as I can tell, the investment failed and the ski area was not able to develop fully. But the good thing is now people can come and explore it. They can also hike to the top. It's a wonderful state hiking trail to the summit with amazing views up there. So it's a good example. Even though it's a lost ski area, it's not a dead place. It's still being used by people, and it's still an interesting place to come and explore.
And as you said a few moments ago, this is a spot that obviously has the T-bar left, and this has a lot for you to see and investigate. Yes. A lot of the other hills and mountains probably have very little left behind.
Right, a lot of areas just have some foundations, maybe a wisp of a trail here or there. There are some places that have some lifts that are still intact or somewhat intact, but to find this, a nearly fully intact ski lift after 40 years is very rare to find that. But a lot of the areas they've developed into homes, some of them are been totally redeveloped, or roads have been built through some of them, and so there's not a lot that have a lot of significant infrastructure left.
There is a T-bar right in Plattsburgh, at right behind the barracks golf course on the old Air Force Base.
Well, a rope tow, yes. Yeah, there was a rope tow there at the barracks, yes. That one, if you're golfing there, you can just ask permission to go check it out and explore it, and they'll let you go do that. Just a small beginner slope, and that's where it was more part of the Air Force Base. Pretty much a place for people to learn to ski. It's a very shallow slope. It's not a place you would go for some high-speed thrill rides, but it's a good place to get some good practice in. Or if you're learning to ski, it would be pretty non-threatening. And all the lights are still in the trees, and it's still pretty well intact area. So that's another area that there's something left for people to see.
And as you try to track these down, you're looking for help. You're looking for folks who remember as kids going to these hills and mountains.
Exactly.
And helping you pinpoint where they are and maybe send along photographs.
Yeah, I'm very interested in learning about people's memories. If they have old brochures, pictures, postcards, want to just tell me about it, I highly encourage them to check out the nelsap.org website. Send me an email on there. I'd love to hear from you, and maybe you can get your pictures in the book.
And you mentioned, is Southern Quebec possibly the next #5 book?
We'll see. Probably not so much with Quebec, because it's an area I'm not as familiar with.
Okay.
But I think the next book is probably going to be on the Berkshires of Massachusetts after this one. But we'll see. Or the Capital District of New York too. There's quite a lot right around the Albany area as well. But there's plenty more potential for titles coming up.
Now, your full-time job is a meteorologist.
Yes, I'm a meteorologist with weather routing in Glens Falls, and we forecast for the marine industry. We do cargo ships and private yachts and sailboats and marinas, and anything on the water we forecast for. So it's a really interesting job. I've always wanted to be a meteorologist, and it's great to be able to do that as my profession.
So when you have an off day, that's when you travel to all parts of the Adirondacks looking for these lost ski areas.
And writing about them as well, because when you have meteorology, it's a 24/7 occupation. So we work a lot of different shifts and rotating shifts, and we have a day off during the week every week. So it's a great chance on a Tuesday to go explore a lost area, do research, when it's a little bit quieter out than on a weekend. So the schedule is quite favorable for doing research and for doing skiing in the winter, because having a day off in the winter is pretty nice to go skiing midweek.
As you hunt for these, when you come across remnants and you discover where they were, what kind of a feeling is that? How's that to actually discover where these were?
It's exciting, especially if you've been trying to hunt for one for a while and like, yes, I found it. Because sometimes they're very obscure. Even the one we're at here today, when I first came to hike this in the summer, I couldn't find it at first, but it was a helpful ranger at the top of the mountain told me exactly where it was. So we were able to find it, and of course it was right in front of us. So sometimes they are literally under your nose to try to locate them. But it is definitely exciting to find it. And it's even more exciting when you can find a shot showing the exact same location, showing the ski lift in operation, and then finding it 40, 50 years later and how the landscape has changed. And it's just fascinating to see how that happens.
And you mentioned your fascination with this as a kid growing up, but for you, is there also a sense of satisfaction to be able to chronicle all these ski areas that were here and are now quickly disappearing and
Yes.
will, for all intents and purposes, probably within the next few decades be
Totally
gone
gone.
altogether?
Yeah, they'll be totally gone the next few decades. It's satisfying to preserve them in the book, preserve them while people are still around that remember them, kind of capture this piece of Adirondack history before it's lost forever. And it's also satisfying when some of these were family-run ski areas to get the family's memories and histories, and they're very excited. That happened with some areas in my Southern Adirondacks book, to know that their information is being preserved forever, and that people that are long away from the Adirondacks and have nothing to do with this area but are interested into it might learn about their family ski area from 50 years ago. That's very satisfying.
Great. What haven't I asked you that you want to add? It's important.
I think that's about it. Yeah, we talked about sending information and the history here and the goals.
Should I give a shout out to Kevin?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Yep.
So you've brought, tell me a little bit about Kevin and what he's doing.
Yep. Kevin's a good friend of mine. I've known him since kindergarten back in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and we're in Boy Scouts together, and I've done lots of hikes together over the years. And he's a great photographer, so we're just here to get some pictures for the book, and they'll see them in the book. So it'll be great to see his photos in there.
Now, where can they get the Southern Adirondacks book? Pretty much bookstores everywhere?
Yep, they can get it at bookstores. They can get it on my website. They're available on there. Amazon has them. Bookstores in Lake Placid have them. The New England Ski Museum has them. A lot of general stores in the Adirondacks, some of them have a book section, so they should be able to find them no problem. But if they can't find it, check it out on the website, and I'll have them on there too.
And when do you hope to have the Northern Adirondacks version ready to go and published?
Yep, the due date is July 1st, 2014 for the text, and they do some editing, so it'll probably be late August, September 2014. This book will be out.
All right, one last thing I did remember. You talked about Marble
Yes.
Mountain. A lot of people probably have never heard of that. That was the original Whiteface.
The original Whiteface on the other side of the ridge on Whiteface. It had a T-bar lift and several rope tows, and it was actually a very substantial ski area. Had a lower section, and then you would take a snowcat and go up to a couple upper rope tows with a gladed section up at the top. Had a base lodge and was really a big complex. But the problem was that the winds were terrible around there, and they scraped all the snow off the trails. This is before we had snowmaking and modern grooming, and it just made it a big challenge to run the ski area.
So this was on the backside of Whiteface,
kinda
along the Veterans Memorial.
Yeah, just between the ski area itself and the Veterans Memorial, the next kind of ridge over on that. And that's also a place where people can explore very easily. It's that atmospheric science building that SUNY has there. You can park there, and there's a hiking trail that'll take you up the T-bar line. You can see the foundations. There's actually an old toboggan rescue shed for the ski patrol on the side of the ski lift. And it's an easy hike to get up that, and there's some nice views, and you can keep going to the top of the mountain if you want, or stop at the top of the T-bar.
The gem to find one that has this much remaining behind, as far as the T-bar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the hills you're uncovering and documenting don't have nearly this much.
No. A lot of the stuff's been removed or rotted away or grown in so much. But to have pretty much a fully intact ski lift here, where the towers are here, the T's are here, part of the drive is here, is quite extraordinary. And the fact that it's 40 years ago, it's that old. It's not that it was abandoned 5 years ago, but if it's 40, makes it even more dramatic that it's still here. So it's a rare gem. It's also rare that it's accessible, it's near a major hiking trail, I don't see any trespassing issues, so it's a it's a rare one to check out. Probably one of the best ones in the Adirondacks to come visit.
And I'll just ask you another quick one, and I'll get the rest later.
Yeah.
This really was part of a grand plan in
Yeah.
the 60s. I mean, they had visions of this rivaling Gore and Whiteface.
Yeah, they were going to have a few thousand vertical feet here, at least over 2,000. They were going to have about a dozen chairlifts and 50, 60 trails and house sites on the water and chalets. And this would have been a huge, huge resort. But it just seems that financially they couldn't do it and the investment didn't work and they went bankrupt and they never were able to succeed. So all they got in here was this T-bar and part of the lift line for a double chair that never got put in. And now all that's left is really the ski tow. Yep.
Just get one more. This one like this with this in the background. Actually, I'll have you step out just
Okay.
this way.
Yep.
Perfect.
Oh, here? Yep.
Yep, right
Yep.
there with that in the background.
I'm going to look anywhere? Or?
Oh, no,
Nope.
just me is fine.
Okay.
So, and then I guess one of the other things is why you do this and what kind of a thrill you get hunting these down in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, it's just really fascinating exploring these lost areas. I've been doing this now on my website for over about 15 years at this point. And it's a great mystery to solve. What happened here? What's left? How did it develop? What was it like when it was open? And the Adirondacks are just filled with them. And in my first book, we discovered 39 lost ski areas. There's probably going to be about as many of that in the northern Adirondacks as well. So to think of the Adirondacks used to have about 80 ski areas in operation at different times, you know, that have now closed. I think that's an amazing statistic that people just don't realize and don't think about, that this was really a big ski region as well. It still is, with some really wonderful ski areas between, you know, Titus and Whiteface and Gore and in Mount Pisgah and Saranac Lake, or in Beekmantown there's a ski area too. So there are still ski areas still running across the northern part of the area here, but there used to be a lot more options as well. A lot of them have been forgotten. Some of them have been forgotten for a very long time. They were rope tows that were in the 30s and 40s that have been gone and abandoned now for 70, 80 years. So even people there aren't even many people that even remember some of the first ski areas. If they were just kids maybe, but that's about it. There's a lot of these areas are really fading away. So one of my goals is to make sure that that doesn't occur, that we can document them and record them right now while there's still some people that might remember these areas, have their memories to share. Put it in a book form, put it on my website so that these areas are never forgotten about, because they are an important historical part of the Adirondacks. It's a part of Americana in a way, these community ski areas. So it's all about you know, preserving them and making sure they don't get forgotten.
And to put it in PBS terms, you guys are kind of like the history detectives.
Yeah, sleuths, and it's just a lot of fun because, you know, it's a little bit of a thrill when you get to find a place like here where you have such large-scale remnants and get to explore them and document them. It's a nice treat, and it's just fun for history to kind of imagine what was this like 40, 50 years ago when it was in operation, and then be able to see what it's like today. It's just really amazing. And just the changes in landscape too, as someone like myself who likes the outdoors and hiking and being out in the woods and everything, to kind of imagine all these trails that were here, and now you look up there and you can't see any of them. They've all completely overgrown. So it's just interesting watching the landscape change over just a few decades too.